So I am here. I have the pleasure to be joined by Maxime Bernier, Mad Max to some, the Honorable Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party of Canada. How are you today, Maxime?
Thank you very much, very well. And I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity to be with you this morning.
Awesome. Yeah, it's an honor to be graced with your presence, good sir. I'd like to begin this conversation by a confession. I was in Peterborough, Ontario, when I hear that the People's Party was being established. Um, I was a student then, I was a second year student. I'm originally from Vietnam and I wish to immigrate to Canada. That's my ambition for now. The first thing I hear of the People's Party of Canada is the policy in which it will drastically reduce the number of immigrants per year from, the destined goal is 100,000 to 150,000 from 350,000. So, well, having some personal stake in that, I was rightfully concerned. And because of all the right-wing populist movements being sprung up across the Western world, from America and Hungary and all that stuff, I sort of dismissed the PPC as just another one of them. This was until I actually listened to what you've said in various podcasts, is most recently with Jordan Peterson. And I became very convinced that the People's Party of Canada might be the only truly conservative party that Canada has, like the only party that advocates for and supports Canadian conservative values, many of which I am in full agreement with. So with that being said, my first question to you, Maxime, is that for those who are not convinced yet, why is it that please make the case that your party will represent conservative values in Canada rather than, say, the Conservatives? Please, the floor is yours.
First of all, I want to thank you for asking that question. It is a very important question first. Yes, there is in Canada a conservative party called the Conservative Party of Canada. And that party is only conservative in name. They don't fight for real conservative values like freedom, less government, smaller government, that will respect individual freedom and personal responsibility. So we are, I believe so, the only real conservative party in Canada. We, the People's Party of Canada. We created that party in 2018. It's a very young political party. When we started that, we had zero support because we didn't have any election. But a year later, in 2019, we had our first election as a political party. So that was a very good election for us. From 0%, we went to 1.6%. And after that, the second election for us was the election in 2021, last September. Mm-hmm. We had 5% of the vote, and this party is growing. So why I'm saying that we are a conservative party? Because we funded that party on four principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And all our policies are in line with these principles. We don't do any compromise with our principle. And it's important for us to have a real discussion about conservative values, Western civilization values in Canada. And I believe that this party is growing. Now, if you look at the polls in Canada, we're supposed to be around 10%. So that's great for a young political party. And we are running on a platform that is very different than the mainstream political parties in Canada, the Conservative, the NDPs, and the Liberals, the Bloc Québécois. So they're all establishment political parties. And we are a voice for Canadians, and we are always putting Canadians first and our country first. So yes, because we are speaking for a smaller government in Ottawa, a more fiscally responsible government, balancing the budget, and also cutting funding to the mainstream media and cutting funding to the foreign aid, and just try to balance the budget without increasing taxes to Canadians. So I believe that you're right when you're saying that we are a conservative, a kind of a conservative party.
Awesome. Right. Of course, we can spend hours and hours going over all the platforms, issues that you, as well as the People's Party's website, have advocated for. But I'd like to focus on only a handful of those for now. So I'd like to move on to asking you, so what are some of the current government's policies? Well, we've done a lot of Justin Trudeau bashing on this little podcast that we have here. You cannot spell Trudeau without the letters T-U-R and D. That's, you know what I'm saying? So what are some of his policies that you would do differently? Let's begin with COVID and vaccines and all that jazz.
Yes, actually, the last 2 years, we were the only, and we are still the only national political party in Canada that said in the beginning of that pandemic that we must not lock down the population. We must keep open the economy. We must protect the older people in Canada, the most vulnerable people, people that are at risk. And so, but Trudeau did the opposite with the help of the opposition parties like the Conservatives, the NDP, and they approve everything that Trudeau did. A vaccine passport. Actually, in Canada, I cannot travel across the country by plane or by train because I decided personally not to take the 2 shots. And I decided that looking at the science and looking at the facts. The data, we know the data right now that, I'm 59 years old, I'm in shape, and I don't have any comorbidities. And so for me, the risk of dying from COVID is less than 0.05%. So I had 90, and I still have 99.5% chances, and 99.95% chances of not dying from COVID. And actually, I had COVID last October. For me, that was a big flu. And for 3 days, I was in the bed, and that's it. And so I have good antibodies right now. But it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's immoral. It is not based on science that now a non-vaccinated person in Canada cannot travel in a plane. Actually, we know right now that everybody can catch and spread the virus. So why I cannot be on a plane? And that's against our Charter of Rights. So that being said, Trudeau had the support of the opposition party when he was doing that. And on COVID-19, we fought, and we will always fight for our rights and freedoms. And I did a lot of rallies across the country and saying that, we must open the economy. We must be sure that we won't impose a mask mandate. We won't impose a vaccine passport. I was against a curfew. I was against stay-at-home orders. So we when we believe in freedom, there's no exception. We believe in freedom and personal responsibility, and we believe that every Canadian must be responsible of their life. And if you're sick, you stay at home. And if you're not, you must have the right to work and travel. And what Trudeau did also at the federal level, he said to the civil servants in Ottawa that they cannot work if they didn't take the 2 shots. And so a lot of people are not working right now because of their personal medical decision, and they didn't want to have an experimental vaccine. And so that policy is not respecting the Constitution, and that's unfair for them. A lot of people in Canada lost their job because of that. So yes, on COVID-19, we always said, let's reopen the economy, and we said no to these draconian measures that were imposed on Canadians.
Yes. So I stayed in Canada during the entirety of the COVID, ever since COVID began. So I went through almost all of the policies that Canadians went through as well. And I must say, if I could get a bit personal, being a person who, recently went through several pretty bad mental health problems, I find that the lockdowns really exacerbated them. And I would assume that it is the case for many other Canadians who are going through some mental troubles. I mean, it would drive even sane people crazy. And one thing you did mention frontline healthcare workers, because I distinctively remember during the first months of COVID, I think it was sometimes before the hashtag wear a mask, where people post these like photos of themselves like with the hashtag support frontline workers, but then these frontline workers, they refuse to participate in the vaccine programs. Again, I disagree with them, but it was all of a sudden the same people who supported, who's add in the hashtag support healthcare workers, frontline workers, turn around and oppose them because they oppose this certain government mandate. I would like to set an aside and talk about your recent encounter with the Canadian police, which happened very recently. I think you might be the first person that I've talked to in this podcast who has been arrested by the Canadian police. So I'd like to hear you share your experience and thoughts about that particular encounter.
Oh my God, yes. So that was happening last summer. In June last summer, I was doing a tour across the country as a leader of a national political party. And I had a tour in Manitoba, and I did a rally over there. No, not a rally. I was supposed to do a rally over there, but before that, I did a meeting in a park, because at that time, we had all the COVID restrictions in a park with maybe 10 person. And the regulation over there in Manitoba at that time was, if you want to have a meeting in a park outside, it must be a maximum of 5 person. So we were 10, and I was speaking with the executive of my local riding association, the People's Party local riding association. And so after that, I was the only one after that. I was 5 minutes after that meeting, I was arrested and cuffed and put in jail for 12 hours for a non-crime. That was political repression. And I believe that the police and the government in Manitoba didn't want me to do my rally that was planned that day, and in Winnipeg. So I was in jail just because I did a meeting in a park. That's against our constitution. That's illegal, that's unconstitutional. And so I'm fighting that right now. And I believe that I will be in the court this September. And I'll do everything. I'm fighting that with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. That's a non-profitable organization, independent from the government, and fighting for civil liberties. And so they are helping me in that case. And I believe and I hope that I will win that. I have the constitutional right as a Canadian to be able to travel across this country and to be able to have meeting in this country, outside or inside. So, but also what I'm doing right now, I'm suing the federal government, the Trudeau's government, because, like I said before, I cannot travel by plane or by train in this country. And it's against the Constitution. So we will be in the court the first week of September, challenging that. And if I win, and I hope so, that will be a case law for every Canadian, and every Canadian will have their right back to be able to travel across the country. That's another important case. So what I'm doing as a leader of a national party, I'm doing that fight with the public opinion as a political leader. Or my job, or my biggest challenge is to be able to convince a lot of people that more Canadians, that all these draconian measures were unconstitutional, not based on science and not based on logic. And I try to change the public opinion as a political leader. And because we know that the establishment traditional politicians are doing politics based on survey and polling and focus group. So if you change the public opinion, that will influence these establishment politicians. And at the same time, as a citizen, I'm fighting these draconian measures in the court. Like, so I have that case in Manitoba, and I have the other case for me to be able to travel across this country. That would be, the hearing will be in Ottawa the first week of September.
Yeah, here's hoping. So, so again, to go back to my question, so what would, say, Prime Minister Maxime Bernier have done COVID policies differently?
Yeah, so for us, our point of view on that is very clear, very simple. We must not have the lockdowns and curfew and stay-at-home orders, and like the Great Burlington Declaration, and these experts said that to just protect the most vulnerable people, the older people older than 75 years old, and they must stay at home, and but reopen the economy. That is our policy on COVID. We don't believe in COVID hysteria, and we must learn to live with that virus.
Yeah, it's especially true at this point. So I'd like to pivot to different issue that concern us both, and of course, this is something that Jordan Peterson has talked about too, and it concerns a bill that is being passed along the House of Commons, Canadian Parliament at this time, Bill number 67. It is presented as an anti-racism bill, simple as that. It recommends, or it mandates anti-racism training programs at educational facilities, schools and higher education, and etc. Of course, you and I both know that the actual agenda of that bill is a lot more mendacious. So, for someone who knows a lot more about that bill than I do, please explain to this podcast listeners what that means. What does Bill 67 means for the constitutional rights, or even the so-called diversity programs, or what does it mean for Canadians as a whole?
Yeah, I'm against that bill, as you may know. That bill is a bill that will try to control hate speech, and on social media, that bill will try also to force people to use pronouns that another person, a trans person, want us to use. We are in a free country here in Canada. We are supposed to be in a free country. And with that bill, that will have a big impact on free speech. And yes, as you said, I can say what I want to say in a free society. And if I'm insulting you, I'm responsible of what I'm saying, but I must have the right to say what I want to say. It's not because that you don't like what I'm saying that it must be hate speech and it must be censored. That's what will happen with that bill. And that's why we believe in freedom and personal responsibility. Each individual are responsible of their action. And if they're doing something bad, they'll be responsible maybe in the court. But we don't need that bill, because that bill will restrain the freedom of speech, will add more censorship here in Canada. We have the censorship coming from big tech corporations like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. And so we don't need more censorship by the federal government.
Yeah, and I believe that you were referring to Bill C-16 there. I think I was referring to Bill 67, which Dr. Pearson describes as, was it Bill C-16 on steroids? And again, this refers to the bill that sort of recommends or mandates anti-racism. So, but as an aside, I don't think we're not going to see Maxime Bernier's Twitter or Instagram handle adding, Maxime Bernier, he, him, or Caesar or whatnot on his bio anytime soon. So that's a relief. I mean, personally, the pronoun game, sickens me. It is a form of compelled speech, and it is a form of, I think, social media style virtue signaling, which is always superficial. But going back to my question, what are your thoughts on the whole anti-racism diversity doctrine? And of course, here we reach the Trudeau bashing portion of the podcast. What do you think of that particular regime that Monsieur Trudeau has been pushing?
Yeah, Mr. Trudeau is pushing the woke agenda. It's a cultural war. We must know that. And all that, not only the Trudeau government, but also some big private corporation. And we don't support that woke culture and censorship and diversity. For Trudeau, Canada is not anymore a nation state, and we are a country with no core identity. He said that, and I believe that he believes in that. So we don't. We believe that Canada has a core identity, maybe more than one, more identities. The culture in Alberta, Calgary is not the same than the culture in Quebec City, in Quebec. So we have different cultures, but that's Canada, that's our country. But for Trudeau, he wants us to have always more and more diversity, and that logic of inclusion. We believe that at the federal level, if you want to work with the federal government, you must be competent. But for Trudeau, that's all about race and gender and promoting people maybe that are not so competent for a job, just because they are Black or just because they're different gender. So I believe in what Martin Luther King in the US said in the 1960s, that you must judge people by their character, not by the color of their skin. And with Justin Trudeau, that's what he's doing. He's judging people by the color of their skin and their gender. And so always promote more diversity at the expense of competence, at the expense of people that are able to do the job. That's not a way that we want to govern this country. Actually, if I'm prime minister, or when I'll be prime minister, I won't have any quota for the number of cabinet minister, number of female cabinet minister, or number of black cabinet minister. No, I will choose them by their competence, and that's it. So it's Trudeau tries to transform our society, and I believe that it's why the People's Party of Canada is gaining more popularity, more support. We believe that we have the right vision for this country. We believe that the more we speak about our vision openly, with passion and conviction, the more support we will have. And actually, if you look at the past, that was the case, from 0% to 1.6% to 5%. And we will be ready for the next general election in Canada that may happen in 3 years. And I believe that the People's Party will grow again. So that's why that's an important fight, not only against Trudeau, but also the leader of the Conservative Party, the leader of the NDP. They all believe in that society, that woke society. And so that's a kind of a ideological war that we must do. Our ideological battle, we must change that and go back to our core values as Canadians. And that's what we want to do at the PPC.
Of course. So you've segued beautifully into what I was going to talk about, which is your opposition to what you call official multiculturalism. So whenever you hear someone, particular in a multicultural and multi-ethnic and multi-religious society like Canada, saying that they oppose multiculturalism, well, that would obviously raise some brows. And if you are on the left of both of us, chances are you would hurl accusations of bigotry or cultural imperialism. But of course, this is not what we do in this show. So I'd like to read a bit from the official page of the PPC's platforms. Over the past decades, the government of Canada has pursued a policy of official multiculturalism that encourages immigrants to keep the values and culture they left behind, instead of integrating into Canadian society and adopting Canadian values and culture. With his cult of diversity, Justin Trudeau has pushed this ideology even further into a form of extreme multiculturalism. So for those who are not schooled in the Canada's official Multiculturalism Act, can you please tell us what that is and what that means, and why do you oppose it?
Yes, the federal government is spending a lot of money on multiculturalism, and it's for me, it's a fact. We have Chinese Canadians, we have Canadians from different diversity, different ethnicity. They're all in Canada. What I'm saying, if you are, for example, coming from China and you are a Canadian citizen, for me, you are a Canadian, and we must look at Canadians like that. I'm not speaking at a Chinese Canadian or a Tamil Canadian or a Black Canadian. For me, as a politician, everybody is a Canadian. That's it. But that act promote multiculturalism, promote the diversity. And so by the federal government is giving money, for example, to maybe the Chinese community in Canada, for them to celebrate the Chinese New Year. If they want to do that, that's their choice. I'm not against that, but I'm against the government using taxpayers' money to promote that diversity. And so we must promote what unites us as a country. We must promote our culture. We must promote our heritage. We must promote our past. And so that's why we are against that legislation and against the money that the government is spending to promote diversity. So I think that's important. And that's in the ideology of Justin Trudeau, that Canada is not, doesn't have, like I said, a core identity. For me, yes, we have a core identity and we must promote that. So that's why we're not, we acknowledge that Canada is a diverse country, but we don't want to use taxpayers' money to promote that. If you're a Tamil Canadian coming from Tamil community and you're a proud Canadian and you want to promote your heritage, good for you, but do it with your own money or money that will be able to raise for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, the key word that permeates the immigration as well as the Canadian identity section of the People's Party's platform is integration. And this is, over the years, I have slowly come along to, agreeing with the integration is position in that of course, there are many ways to be Canadian, as you have said, and as I have observed. Canada is, of course, a country with 2 official languages, a few hundred First Nations, and a multitude of other immigrant communities that make up the beautiful tableau that is your country and my hopefully adopted country. And the word integration, I think is the only practical solution for all of these communities to live in harmony without, say, the country of Canada turning into just a federation of all of these different immigrant communities living separately amongst each other, which is something that happens a lot in immigrant communities. Of course, the US, that is still the case, and in Europe, I think that is even more the case. So why this misunderstanding? And I think this is a question: why does the say the mainstream media, the elites that you've mentioned, carry this disdain towards the People's Party platform? Even though I think that I myself, as well as a good number of Canadians, both Canadian-born and immigrants, would find your platform reasonable, even agreeable.
Yes, as you said, the mainstream media in Canada, the CBC, CTV, and Global Mail, and all these mainstream media, plus the establishment politicians, didn't like our platform on immigration because we are against mass immigration. And I believe that mass immigration, it's when you have 450,000 people, that's the number that Canada will have this year. 450,000 newcomers every year, starting this year. When you are a population of 38 million people, that's a lot of people. And I believe it would be very difficult to integrate all these people to our society. So that being said, 450,000 people a year, mass immigration. After 2 years, it's a New Brunswick in Canada. New Brunswick, it's a province of Canada. So that's a lot of people. And actually, the worst about that, only 26% of them are economic immigrants. So a person that will come here in Canada to work in Canada because we were not able to find that person or person with that skill here in Canada. So that person, when you have more economic immigrants, more people that are coming here to work, it's easier for them to integrate our society. It's easier to them to participate in our society. Now, what we have right now, 74% of our immigrants are refugees, people that are crossing the border at the border in Quebec, Roxham Road, illegally, and saying that they are refugees when they're coming from the US. We must stop that. We must be sure that everybody will respect our borders, and that's not happening right now. These people that are crossing the border illegally in Canada, their life is not in danger in the state of New York. Their life is not in danger in the US. We must, if we want to be generous, we must help the real refugees that are waiting in a camp somewhere in the world where their life is in danger. So these people are jumping the queue, and we are not helping the real refugees. So we must stop that. And also in the 74% of them, they're immigrants, there's a lot of reunification of family. If you want to come and work in Canada, yes, you can come and you can ask your wife to come with you, or if you're a lady, you can ask your husband to come with you, but not your grandparent and your parents and grandparents. And if they want to come, they must come because they have a job. When you decide to leave your country, it's a very tough decision for an immigrant. And in that decision, they decided to leave behind them some of their family, and that was a decision, and maybe some part of their culture. They will bring a new flavor to Canada with their experience and their culture. They're welcome. But that's what we want to do. We want to, stop the reunification of family with the parents and grandparents. And so instead of having 26% of our immigrants that are economic immigrants, we must double that. It must be more than 50%. That will help our country, that will help the immigrants. And yes, we must help the refugees, the real ones that are waiting somewhere in the world. And yes, if you're coming and you want to have your wife or your husband with you, you must be able to do that. So that's a big reform, but that's a reform that is important for the future of our country, because we want these immigrants to be able to be part of our society and flourish here in Canada.
Yes. Just an aside, of course, given what's been going on in Eastern Europe, how would a PPC-led government respond to the Ukraine refugee crisis?
Yeah, we will be open to have these people coming to Canada, but we must stop the fake refugees, the ones that are crossing the border in the US and coming to Canada. That's what is happening in Ukraine. It's a humanitarian disaster. A war is never good for both parties. And, I'm not pro-Russian or pro-Putin. I'm not pro-Ukraine. We at the PPC, we are for peace and prosperity. And we believe that we must have a diplomatic solution to that crisis. But in the meantime, it's very, very sad what is happening. And a lot of people are dying because of that war. So yes, we can open our door to some refugees in Canada, but we must stop to receive the other people that are crossing illegally our border at the Roxham Road.
Right. So of course, I'm really anticipating the part where I actually address the immigration policies that have raised my concerns a few years ago. Of course, I've already mentioned 100,000 to 150,000 immigrants, certain restrictions to family reunification programs, and changed the law to make birth tourism illegal. I'm still, of course, the jury is still out on that. I'm still considering whether or not that particular set of policies is agreeable. But nevertheless, it has been a feature in, say, I guess, Western media, or at least the more liberal parts of voices of Western media, that it's either open borders or you are a xenophobe. I'm sure that accusations of xenophobia has been lobbed at you more frequently than you would enjoy. I'm reminded of this book by a Canadian author, Doug Saunders, called Maximum Canada, where he advocates, you know, uh, increasing the population of the country to reach 100 million, which you would probably find to be kind of a nightmare. Um, here's here's what I have observed. Many Western countries have, well, it is reasonable to have a policy that restrict immigration that is good for the country as well as good for the immigrants entering it. You can obviously you cannot support everyone, but aside from, let's say, well, I'm in Vietnam, and Vietnam has a pretty close border. We don't often let in immigrants from outside. Well, you know, a typical Canadian citizen or liberal would find that reasonable. So would Japan's. But when it comes to their own country or the United States or Europe, well, they would obviously react in ways that, you know, say, well, open borders is the only way to go, and any other position that restrict immigration is bigoted and xenophobic. So why is that so? Why is it that you know, liberals accept closed borders from any other country, but say their own or the West in general?
That's a good question. I don't think I have the answer on that one, but what I can tell you is also that open borders is promoted by the UN and with the migration compact, and so the UN wants the Western nations to open their borders to everybody coming from other countries. But you're right by saying the opposite. It's not always true also. So we believe that it's a privilege to be a Canadian, and you know, there's always a cost on immigration, and there's a cost for the Canadian society. And so that's why we have policies like that, not only in Canada, but in Western countries for a long time. And immigration must be a decision from a national government. And that's why we are saying no to the UN Compact on migration. That being said, I don't know why the promotion of always more and more and more. They're saying, you know, in Canada, it's because of the birth rate is very low, but actually it's the same thing. When you have older people coming to Canada, like I said before, 74% of our immigrants are not economic immigrants, and a big part of them are parents and grandparents coming from reunification of family. That's older. So the impact of immigration and so evident, like they're saying. You need to grow the population to, yes, have economic growth. I believe that you must do that in a sustainable way. And I believe that mass immigration, it's not sustainable. So one of the arguments for open borders is that, you know, the birth rate and the population is older, and you need to have more young people, and it would be good for economic growth. But for me, in the short term, immigration is a cost for a country. Yeah, and you know, if you look at what is happening in France right now, in Europe, there's a no-go zone over there when, you know, it's too dangerous to go there and people are not part of the society. We don't want that in Canada. That is happening when you have mass immigration. That's why we want sustainable immigration, a maximum of 150,000 a year, and we can increase that number depending on different reasons. But that being said, it's our position, and people who believe in mass immigration, they believe that we must have more people for economic growth. So yes, when you're speaking about immigration in Canada, it's easy for the mainstream media and your political opponents to paint you as anti-immigration, and that's not what we believe. And we believe that this country has been funded by francophone, anglophone, and people coming from different places. And we built that country, and we want to keep that country and have more people that would be part of that country, part of that culture.
Of course, that is completely understandable. So final question, since I'm mindful of your time. So of course, in my short time as a student of Canada, I see that I think that most, if not all, the major Canadian political parties are now tilting leftward or are on the left already. There are two obvious center-left parties, the Liberals under Trudeau and the NDP under, I guess, Jagmeet Singh at the moment. I'm sure that the Greens have always been left. And of course, in your hometown of Quebec, there's the BQ, Bloc Québécois, which is separatist, which I consider as a variation of left-wingism. The Conservatives, as you've said, has tilted leftward in many ways. So how can we, as in me and you and other Canadian voters, revive or construct a stable, stable and diverse and politically viable Canadian right? How can that be done?
Yeah, first of all, I believe that people must, before voting, must look at the platform of all these political parties, including, us for sure. And we want people to understand that if you want to keep that country, if you like that country, that's what we are fighting for. We are fighting for our civilization, our Western civilization. We are fighting for our country. We are fighting for our people. We are putting Canadian first and Canada first. We are fighting for the sovereignty of our country. So I believe people, if they want People's Party of Canada, and also go follow me on Twitter, Maxime. I hope that you'll support us. You can become a member. I was saying that, if you like what we are doing, if you want to support us, I believe that, you can become a member, you can speak to your friends, to your family, because in Canada, there are still a lot of people that don't know that we exist. We are a young, new political party, and we don't have the support of the mainstream media. The mainstream media don't try to promote our platform. They don't want us to be successful. So that's why we're using social media. That's why I'm doing a lot of interviews like this one with you, and I'm very pleased with that. So I believe we at the People's Party, we believe in people. We have faith that you have the ability, the dignity, and the right to make your own decisions and determine your own destiny. That's the People's Party. That's why our name is People's Party of Canada. We put people first, you first, and not a big fat government in Ottawa that will tell you what to do with your day-to-day life. So that's a big difference with us and the other political parties. And if we want to change that woke culture that is everywhere in Canada and the censorship, we must start doing that battle of ideas. And I hope that we'll have more support. And that's why I believe that this party will grow and will be able to have an influence in Canadian politics. And we started that influence at the last general election by having 5%. And maybe if we have more support, we'll have some of our candidates that would be able to debate. And that's a kind of ideological revolution that we are doing. So I'm asking people, if you like what I'm saying, you want to know more, don't hesitate, inform and go on our website and be active. That's the only way that we will win that battle of ideas.
Of course. I've always said that one of the things that a new party, at least in a democratic country, can do is, well, to be politically viable is to garner popular support, to establish a firm grassroots basis. And it seems like you and the party is doing just that. So with that being said, Maxime Bernier, I thank you for your time and your insight. And I wish you and the party all the best of luck.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. And take care.
Yeah.